Greetings. Karotha Kofe here. Just real quick. Well, it might not be quick, but I've been meaning to do this video for quite some time. I'm getting ready to work on some things right now, but I wanted to share. There was a post that I made on Facebook some time ago asking people what was the catalyst. That's what it was. What was the catalyst that awakened them, or was the biggest catalyst for their awakening? And for me, there's a series of them, but one of the main ones that really keeps me humble is the reality that, as a person who grew up in Christianity, a person who grew up learning from Pentecostal parents, a person who grew up with a belief in Jesus Christ, and coming into the understanding that there was more, right? But the way that I did it was a way that most conscious or woke people would frown upon. I found myself. I awakened to myself. I learned that there was more through reading the words of Christ. You see, for me, I wasn't one of those Christians who just kind of played with it, right? I was a person who was actively trying to become my greatest self. Give me 1 second. And in the process of that, I studied the Bible very intensely, and intently, for that matter. But I studied it with the intention of finding what was really being said. Hopefully I can do this. Try to see if I can set this up. All right. Yeah. So I did it with the intention of finding what was really being said. I went into the Strong's Concordance. I studied words, the meaning word for word in verses, right? And what I found after finding some quite illuminating things, I found that something very simple, which was that Christ was not necessarily talking to everyone. He told his disciples, go, speak to the Hebrews. And then, if they don't listen, then go to the Gentiles. Well, what does this mean? Why would a God or the Son of God tell his people, specifically those who are of a particular bloodline, a particular tribe or nation of people, to go only to their own people with this gospel that is supposed to be given to the whole world? And then, if they wouldn't listen, take it to some of the other people, right? And as I've grown and learned and realized certain things, but I've learned and understood what exactly he meant. But in that time, when I was studying it, what I found was he was creating a sort of government. If you look in parallel, right, to what we experience here in the West as melanated or melanin rich people, and how we exist in a dominant society of European ideologies that essentially castrate our indigenous mind. They castrate our African mind. They castrate our uh, indigenous American mind. Right? The holistic understanding of what it means to be a spiritual being, to be a human being. We have lost our connectivity to the deeper mysteries because we have lost the ability to understand more than one concept at a time. Everything's categorized, everything's compartmentalized. You study science, you study science. You study spirituality, you study spirituality. You study anatomy, you study anatomy, right? And so forth and so forth. Mathematics, art, whatever the case may be. Not realizing that all of these things work together. And because we don't realize that all of these things work together, we miss out on, like I said, the connectivity of it all, the reality that we have a mind of our own that is much more complex and able to understand the deep mysteries of life. And so, in the same way, in Israel, uh, Jerusalem, whatever you want to call it, when this Christ was telling his disciples, or essentially his initiates, to go to the people of his lineage, the people of his bloodline, the people of his nation, and share this message. He was essentially telling them in the midst of a Roman occupation, where the Romans had come and taken a land and permeated their belief system throughout the land. And now it's like, okay, we have to retake our own belief. We have to retake our own mind. We have to retake what it is that they've taken from us. And from there, when you see that they've established the church in the book of Acts, right, they begin to create their own government. They begin to create pastors, deacons, ministers, and with a corresponding, I don't want to say caste system because it wasn't a caste system, with a corresponding structure of giftings. We talk about prophets, teachers, pastors, evangelists, and so on and so forth. Right? Ephesians 4:11. And show forth this flow, right? 1 Corinthians 14:26. I remember it like it was yesterday because this was something that I studied in like I said, intensely, right? How is it then, brethren, that when you come together, one of you has a this, a that, or that, or the other, right? Everybody has something to bring to every gathering. A song, a hymn, a revelation, a tongue, whatever the case, right? It's essentially talking about the bringing together of the many gifts of the people and everyone being able to contribute something to the gathering. It's not talking about being in a church service where one person is standing on the podium and they're conducting the service and or leading out the service. That's not the way this works. The way it works is everybody has a gift. Someone, by the leading of spirit, flows in that gift. And then if another person is given something in the middle of that flow, then the person who is already speaking must then relinquish the flow to that person who is now being spoken to or spoken through by spirit. It comes with a humility that allows for us not only to be channels for what Spirit has to say to us, but also to allow others to be channels. When we think that we're the only ones that have this connection, we all have the connection. We're all spiritual beings. But we all have differing levels of consciousness or awareness of our spirituality. And this is what it means to be woke or conscious, right? Not to be aware of racial stuff that's going on, not to be aware of, all the stuff that society wants you to be mad about, but to be aware of your higher self, to be aware of the spiritual nature of yourself, the things about you that you cannot see. That's what it means to be awake, to be aware, to be awake to the reality that this is not the only reality. And so, reading this passage, it showed me this whole map, this whole structure of what they were creating in the new church. Whether this was real or not, they were creating something to fight back against the powers that be, against those who were trying to impose their view of spirituality on the world at that time, on that place in the world at that time. Trying to conquer the world with this one ideology, but that's impossible to do because the world is made up of many ideologies. That's the way God works. That's the way the Creator works. But it just showed me that there was a bloodline aspect to this, that there was an aspect to this that we were not being told, that it had to do with where we come from, who we are genetically, and what spiritual forces, what deities, what gods we actually are tied to genetically, that our ancestors are tied to. If our ancestry is tied to specific deities, then that means that deity has a specific power in our lives, right? Ancestry is all about bloodline. It's all about blood. And we talk about in Christianity, or they talk about in Christianity, how there's power in the blood of Jesus. There's power in the blood. There's power in the blood. But they don't understand, realize the power is in your blood. That's what Christ was trying to tell them. The power is in your blood and your connection to your personal ancestral deity, ancestral God, ancestral force, or archetype is really what they are. But if you don't know your ancestral archetype, if you don't know your ancestral force, if you don't know your ancestral God, if you don't know your ancestral deity, how can you have any power? If you're operating off of something that is completely at odds with your own genetics, right? Many of us may be tied to Christ as a deity. Many of us may not. Many of us might be tied to some completely other ancestral deity. I know that my family, on my mother's side, my most spiritual side, comes from the deity of Legba, or in some traditions, he's called Eshu, right? And so I know that I have a particular connection to this particular force. I know that I have a particular connection to this particular archetype of the messenger of the gods, the carrier of the Ashe, the Lord of the crossroads, the miracle worker, the trickster, the linguist, the wise primordial force that Legba is, who goes between, he's the mediator between Mawulisa, as I call him, or the creator, and humanity, or the creator and the ancestors and humanity, or the Vodun, or the Orisha, or the gods and humanity, right? I have this connection with him because it is part of my bloodline. But that's taking me some time. That's another story for another day. But I say all this just to explain to you, like, the importance of, even though I've gotten off track, the importance of judging people who may be coming out of Christianity, right? Who still follow the Bible, still read it, still, go back to it. I still go back to it. And I'm grateful for that, because now I see it for what it is. I see where things have been changed, but I see where the mystery is still hidden in those books. Because now that I'm learning from many other sources and many other ways and many other traditions, I can go back to the Bible and say, that's what this was, right? But the initial thing that brought me to my awakening, to the expansiveness of what I am, was reading the words of Christ, reading the Bible. But many woke or conscious people will tell you, throw that book away. That book can't help you. That book is to enslave you, etc., etc. But it freed me. And some people might say, oh, you just another Christian that's trying to act like, you're woke. Listen, anybody who knows me knows that I'm far from that. I don't even read the Bible anymore. It just comes back to me, what I've read over all the years that I had been a Christian, up until 2010, 2009, 2010, yes. But it's just amazing to me, the parallels. It's amazing to me how things make much more sense now that I know things outside of Christianity that make Christianity make more sense to me. But not more sense as in I need to follow it or I need to give all of my energy to Christianity. No. We are much more than one particular belief system. As children of Africa, ancient children, we are made up of every archetype, every tradition, almost every ancestry. We have many things that make up who we are. There's nothing that we can really say is new to us because we created it all. I choose to go back to the practices of my ancestors and take it into the future. But don't automatically hear somebody use a word that is used in Christianity or in Christian circles. Don't take, don't automatically judge them. Don't automatically come against the person who reads the Bible or who quotes scripture or whatever. You don't know what people need. You don't know what people need to awaken them. You have no clue because it's not your journey. It's theirs. And if they fail, if they die, if they lose, that's on them because those are the choices that they made. There's always an opportunity given to all of us to make decisions to change. It's up to us to actually change. It's up to us to actually heed the words that Spirit gives us, to move in a different direction and say, this is where I'm being led. To be open enough to hear, to be open enough to receive what Spirit has for us. It's important. Very important. Remember that. Remember that before you judge someone. Remember that before you, and even for Christians who may be watching this, or people who may not identify as Christian but still follow the Bible, Hebrew Israelites, whatever, if there's a label or not a label. Whatever you are, whatever you follow, like, don't look at people that have something outside of what you have, or that practice something outside of what you practice, or that believe something outside of what you believe as people that are against you, because they're not against you. They're for themselves. And just like we all have different people, different eye color, different hair, different fingerprints, different shapes and sizes, we all have different divinities, different forms of godliness, different ways to express the Creator in our human form, in our human reality. You cannot forget that. You cannot. If you do, you leave yourself no escape route when your tradition runs into a brick wall. You've got to evolve. You've got to change. You've got to realize that people know things that you don't know. People know things that you don't know. Until you realize that, stuck you shall be. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget to click on Patreon, the link in the description, and follow me there. Become a patron, and hopefully you love what I share there, and support my art, support my contribution to humanity, and like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the other side, between the above and the below. Adabo.